project today. Tori's been bugging me to do this video and I haven't done it yet because it's for her Christmas present. How she knows about it, we're going to talk about making stuff to spin from. Some lovely fibers from raw wool. So I'll walk you through my process of how I got to this part, but initially what had happened is a couple months ago, or maybe it was a month ago, she and I were spending a lot of money on raw wool and fiber and alpaca and whatnot because it was all beautiful and cheap and we were excited about it. And so we were coming to the end of that and we're like, okay, we need to save money, And so there's a Facebook group called Raw Wool for Sale, and she found a 19 micron yearling WLA fleece, and we were both just like enthralled with it, and we had talked about like, oh, let's get a pound and we'll split it and everything, and I ended up talking her into not buying it, and then I turned around and I bought a pound of it for her for Christmas. So now I lied to her and I told her it was something else, and what I've been doing is been getting input and opinions from her of what she likes to spin, so I can give her something that she likes to spin from. So I'm going to be posting this video after Christmas. So let's get started. So this is the raw fleece, and this is actually not as bad as when I first opened it. There was a lot more tags and veggie matter. I've actually shaken a lot of it out, but there's obviously still some more skirting I need to do. So that's my first step, is I will just take chunks of this. I've been actually dividing it into 2-ounce sections that I wash at a time, just so I could experiment with the different batches and whatnot. So my first step is I'm just going to sit here and pull all of this veggie matter and the tags out, and then kind of off to the side here, what I do with this as well is I shake the crap out of it, and I really do get a lot out of it like this. So I'm gonna just clean this little section up and I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. So pretty much what I've done is an extremely tedious version of tumbling a fleece. And if you take a look, there's just an abundance of seconds and hay and dirt that just came out. And that's from a tiny little section of fleece. That's actually not even an ounce. Well, maybe a little over an ounce. But just so you have an idea of what it looked like before, this is the part that I have not tumbled yet. So it's amazing how much it just opens up the fleece, and like I can even flip it to the other side. The other side looks even better. This is the inside of the fleece. And I'm honestly not really a good judge of whether something is high grease or low grease. This seems like it's kind of a high grease fleece. I know it's kind of in the same category as merino and rambouillet, whatever. How do you say those names? I don't know. Now we have 2 ounces of tumbled, quote unquote, fibers. So from here, I just want to make sure that's nice and fluffed up so it doesn't get all compacted. And then I'm going to stick it in a mesh laundry bag so that I can scour it in my sink. One thing I have learned so much through this process is that, like, honestly, by mill standards, the fleece, even if I had not touched it, if I had not done anything with it, is still considered a fairly clean fleece. But especially when you're processing at home, and even if you're sending it to a mill, the more you get out, the less that will actually be in your final product. So I tend to be a little over tedious at home because I don't want to have to worry about tags and veggie matter in the final stages. I just rather get as much of it out now as I possibly can. So let's go and scour this thing. If you haven't done this at this point, make sure that your hot water heater is turned up so that your water is nice and hot. Otherwise, what will happen is if it does not get hot enough, you will not remove the grease. So I'm just going to let this fill for a moment. Okay, you don't need to fill your sink extremely full. Now what I do is I use Echo Scour, and one of these is supposed to be enough for 2 pounds. So since I'm doing 2 ounces, I really only need right about half a teaspoon-ish, but I don't really pay attention to that too much because having a little bit more isn't going to hurt it, but I want to make sure there's enough to remove the grease. You don't need to have your sink extremely full, just enough to make sure the fiber is fully submerged, and I like to make sure that mine can float a little bit, just so it's not sitting in the dirt that is coming out of it. I also put my stuff in after the water is done so it doesn't froth up and foam. A lot of people say that doesn't matter. I'm not willing to take that chance. I've done it both ways and there doesn't seem to be any effect, but still not willing to take that chance. At this point, your water will be hot. I kind of want to get a potato masher specifically for this so that I don't scald my hand, because this really doesn't, it's not a heat barrier. But then I'm just going to set the fiber in and I'm going to press it down. Now the one thing is, once it's wet, I'm not too concerned about it agitating, because I have done this a lot and it does not felt. You just don't want suds and agitation and change of temperature, which I'm sure several other videos will outline, but you can see already that water is getting pretty dirty. So we're just going to leave that for 20 minutes and we will come back to it. Niceties. So just pull this out. Water's still really hot. Wash down any particles sticking to the side of the sink. And then I'm going to fill it back up for my rinse water and leave it for an additional 10 minutes. And I will cover that back up. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes. And I'd say that's pretty clean. So there's a little bit in the bottom, but it's still fairly clear. So now, what I haven't showed you is that I've actually already started heating up a dye pot in the back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna transfer this from here straight to my dye pot. Okay, I've taken all this out of the mesh bag and it's going straight into the dye pot, and because I started heating this up already and my water was still scouring hot, there's no temperature change, which obviously if there was a temperature change we'd have an issue with felting. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of dye in here because I can, and this kind of gave me a fun result last time, so I'm going to try this again, where I'm just going to sprinkle little bits on the top. Spreads fast. I use greener shades dyes. I've already added my citric acid into the water before I put my wool in. I'm just gonna let that sit. My dye bath, it's clear. I can see all the way to the bottom of that. And what I've done here is I've actually filled my sink with hot water, and I'm just going to dump it straight from the pot into the hot water. I'm just trying to make it an easier transition because I don't measure the temperature of the water. I'm sure that would make things easier, but I don't. And I just washed my fiber straight in the sink. Now, I thought I was being all brilliant, and because I thought of this. And then Tori's like, oh yeah, someone did that on this video. And I was like, oh, haha, fine, never mind. I'm not that smart. But that's okay. So then I've got just a little bit of unicorn fiber wash. And we want to just make sure that that's color fast and wash out any excess dye sitting on the top. This is going to be hot. These are 2 batches of fleece that I have already washed and dyed. Sorry, dried, not dyed. And I'm discovering more and more the importance of kind of keeping track of your experiments. So I've started just taking notes of different methods and whatnot that I've used. Now, initially, when I had started off, I washed these in my bathtub. And I quickly found out that that wasn't going to work because there was so much water that it was diluting the solution so much that my 2 batches that I washed still had grease in them. And then I tried something else where, okay, I didn't skirt this one as much, and there's a lot more junk in there, which is why I now say, okay, I'm going to skirt as much as I can before I wash. And I had also tried running some through my wool picker before I washed it, some after I washed it. Those ended up with a lot of neps. But I've washed 6 batches now, and I'm kind of getting the hang of it. After the wool was dried, I just wanted to experiment, and I wanted to try and get part of the fleece that was just a nice smooth roving. Combed top. People get technical about stuff like that. Now, technically this really isn't a true combed top either, because with the fiber going every which way, the locks weren't exactly preserved in the first few batches that I did. But I'm going to include a link to my favorite video about combing to give you a really, really beautiful, solid combed top. But in the meantime, this is just some stuff. I did these on my Valkyrie Viking combs. They're not the fine combs. I realize that with a finer fiber, you should probably use finer combs, but that's still out of my budget. Anyhow, so here I have 6 batches of waste that I pulled off of the combs every time I transferred it from one side to the other. Now this, you can see there's still, this one's kind of nasty looking because this is when I actually latched everything onto the tines, and it's kind of sort of dirty, but it's not too bad. But now when you get into the second batch, obviously there's more waste because it was actually hooked onto the tines this time, and this is where you really start seeing some of the veggie matter coming out. Sorry, I have a shadow. Let's see if I can adjust that. And okay. So there's some veggie matter in here, there's some tags and whatnot, and you see there's a lot more waste this time than there was with that first one. Then I get to my third one, and there's even more waste, and we're still pulling out quite a lot of veggie matter. And these are all short staples. I don't want these in combed top because these are not going to be very nice. And this is all neppy. Nasty, neppy. But now, as I get to about my 4th time over the combs, I'm getting less waste and I'm getting less stuff in between. There was a lot of second cuts in this fleece. I was kind of disappointed about that. But and then we get into the 5th time pulling it off the combs and we're even less. Now you'll notice I have slightly more waste from the last couple of times that I pulled off of my combs. The reason for that is I start pulling my waste off sooner, so I get less of these shorter fibers and whatnot, but there's really not a whole lot of veggie matter in this as there was in the first one, and this one I'll actually save and probably dye it for some core spinning stuff because it's short, but it's still, there's still some length to this that we could kind of have fun with texture wise. But I'm going to show you a little bit off of the rovings. Now from this batch of fiber that I pulled off, this is the very start of when I first started pulling off, and if you can see, it's really nice. There's no neps, there is no veggie matter in any of this. But then as I get more and more towards the end, if I grab the end piece, you can see there's neps and there is small amounts of dirt particles and veggie matter in here, but generally speaking, the beginning of what you're taking off your combs is going to be the nicer portion. So this is kind of the culmination of what I am trying to accomplish. Essentially, I want to be able to take bits and pieces of the fleece and give Tori kind of a sampler of all the different things that can be done with this fleece. So first off, over here, this is what I was talking about earlier with the combing. Like, this is the combing waste that has been dyed just for some fun art texture and whatnot. Some of this has just been run through the picker to be opened up a little bit. And so obviously with the comb waste, there's the actual combed top. So there's just a little bit of a sampler from each color that I've dyed in this process. So this one is a section that's been combed from these locks, which were washed and dyed in the exact same fashion as the one I just showed you. So very lovely locks. And then the other one that I was experimenting with is just taking the raw locks and kind of dip dyeing them in each direction. So I've got some purple, blue sort of colors happening in here. And then this is the combed top that I've been working on, and once I have enough of this, I will actually dye the rest of this. Now this was from the other batches that I had to wash twice to get all the grease out. So this one felt a little bit, it was a little harder to comb through, and so I got more neps and whatnot, and the fiber is still ridiculously clean. It definitely helps to do the skirting tumbling before everything else. So that is kind of the project that I've been working on. I really hope she likes it. And give this video a like. Check us out on Facebook at Feathertail Fiber Arts, and check out our Etsy store as well.